Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Still Here, a recovery roundtable. I will be your host tonight. My name is Max Backer, Senior Community Manager at Work at Health. And let me be the first to say to you, Happy Recovery Month. And thank you for coming. Let me tell you, it is an honor to share this space with such talented, creative, and inspiring human beings as we celebrate the many paths to recovery. Tonight, we're going to hear from each and every one of these folks, authors, podcasters, advocates, all of the above. And they're going to tell you about their paths and why they're still here today doing this recovery thing. And what a better way to celebrate tonight than to honor that we are still here today, every one of us. May we keep going. And before we dive in, I want to share just a little bit with you about Work at Health and the care that we provide. First of all, we have been around for 10 years now, which at the time, 2015, was very cutting edge in digital health. And we were founded by two women in recovery who were looking for an alternative to traditional rehab. And many of our team members are in recovery too, including me. And we've been there. We even have our own recovery meetings. So since 2015, we have helped more than 35,000 people on their recovery journeys. Work at Health is the addiction recovery app. Think of it as rehab in your pocket. It's a full recovery program that you can access from your phone or computer anytime, anywhere. And we offer medications to ease withdrawal, reduce cravings, lower the relapse risk. We have judgment-free video visits with licensed, compassionate providers. We have free at-home screenings, never penalizing for positive results. We have recovery groups and a community forum for every topic identity there is in recovery. And we also support co-occurring conditions like anxiety, depression, insomnia, because we treat the whole person and not just the addiction. And for people balancing jobs, families, disabilities, and the stress of modern life, we make treatment accessible, affordable, with insurance, self-pay options at 1/10 of the cost of traditional rehab. We are backed by science, evidence-based, and we lead with compassion and harm reduction. And that is the heart of Work at Health. We believe that healing is possible for everyone. And that, in fact, is the inspiration behind tonight's webinar. So let me introduce to you my illustrious panel behind tonight's webinar. First up, we are thrilled to welcome again Amy Dresner, journalist, speaker, author of the raw and unforgettable memoir, My Fair Junkie, a memoir of getting clean and getting dirty, staying clean. A former comedian and recovering addict, Amy's unflinching voice has made her a powerful presence in the conversation about addiction and recovery. She's written for outlets like The Fix, Vice, and Psychology Today, among others. Next, we are very excited to welcome David Manheim, the creator and host of the top-rated Dopey podcast, a show about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. Since launching Dopey in 2016, David has built a passionate audience and interviewed an incredible range of guests, from Margaret Cho to Jamie Lee Curtis, and he lives in Long Island with his family and works with the legendary Cat's Delicatessen. Up next is Erin Khar, author of Strung Out and the voice behind the popular advice column Ask Erin. Erin is a writer, a speaker, and a recovery advocate whose work has appeared in Self, Salon, Cosmopolitan, The Times of London, and many other outlets. Her candid storytelling and practical wisdom shine in her Substack column, Ask Erin. Please welcome Tracey Helton Mitchell, author of The Big Fix, Hope After Heroin. After entering rehab in 1998, Tracey dedicated her life to supporting people who use drugs. Her powerful memoir challenges stigma and champions harm reduction, offering hope and practical solutions. Today, she continues to speak out for compassionate, evidence-based recovery support. And finally, we're excited to welcome Sean Paul Mahoney, writer, peer support specialist, and LGBTQ plus recovery trainer based in Portland, Oregon. In long-term recovery himself, Sean serves as program manager for the Mental Health and Addiction Association of Oregon and sits on the city's Ryan White Planning Council. He's also the author of the memoir, Now That You've Stopped Dying, sharing his powerful story of healing and hope. And y'all, let me turn to you, my dear panelists. I thought that we'd go around first and hear from each and every one of you about what did your recovery path look like. I want to hear about the sparks of clarity or those unexpected moments when recovery really clicked for you and you said you're done. I think that recovery is made of these small and pivotal moments when you realize that recovery is even possible for you. And I think I would like to start with you, Amy Dresner, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off. Heck yeah, get on in here.
I was like, please don't start with me. Oh God, oh God. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Amy Dresner. These to me are the rock stars of the recovery world and you know what they do. And I mean, I'm so thrilled that to be here with everyone, and they're also my friends. So that's awesome too. Thank you, Max. What did my, oh God. Woo! It was messy. It was really, really messy. It took me, it took me a good 20 years to like get on the path and stay on the path. And I would get a couple years and I'd relapse and I'd get a couple years and relapse. And um I've been in many rehabs, many rehabs. They know me. And detoxes and it continued to get worse. I mean, my story's not Tracy's story blows us all fucking away. Like Tracy's story is so fucking gnarly. I just feel like, hi, I'm a Jewish American princess, and then I like tried to stab my husband, and I got, but like, um, it got worse and worse and worse. I gave myself epilepsy from crystal meth, which I still have today, and I have. Check it out if you're into robots, man. So, I'm on 4 medications. I'm on more drugs. Someone was on drugs. What do you saw? Hey, um, so I'm 50. I'll be 56 in November. So terrifying. So all please put your money towards my GoFundMe for a little. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, I started trying to get sober at 25 and I finally got sober at 42. So I just want to say, people from Raccoon Church, welcome, raccoons. Um, don't stop. Don't stop trying. If you're alive, um, you've got a shot. And it did get worse and worse, and I did get into IV drug use, and I did overdose, and I did, many psych ward stays. I have a big collection of grippy socks. I mean, what hot girl doesn't? Come on. Uh I think for me, what happened was like I lost everything. Like everyone was done with my shit. My dad was like, you used to be able to ruin my life. Now you can't ruin my lunch. Like everyone was done. I got arrested for felony domestic violence with a deadly weapon. Woo-hoo-hoo! That's the way to end a marriage. And I was in sober living for 2.5 years. And that kind of saved my life. Losing everything saved my life. And at the time, so I'm doing for me the legal system really worked, and I did get sober in AA, but the legal system really kicked my ass. And I got 240 hours of community labor, and I was sweeping the streets and feeling really sorry for myself. And then I had this epiphany and I went, you know, this could be the worst thing that ever happened to you, or this could be the best thing that ever happened to you. And it's your decision. Like, you're 42 years old, Amy, and I kind of see a cycle here. And so maybe it's you. Maybe not everyone's out to get you, And I just was like, what lessons can we learn? What can we do? Like, and so I just decided that I was gonna make it the best opportunity I could, because I had to. Otherwise, I was gonna go to jail, and I did, and I actually made it fun, and I was sorry when it was over, and I've never looked back. Not that I haven't had moments where I was like, "Fuck," you know, I wanna, I'd like to get off the planet, or man, that drink looks good, or seeing someone shooting up and being a little bit like, but I know where it takes me, and I don't ever want to go back there. And yeah, I think that's it. I was a slow learner. Just a slow learner, and I think that's okay. I really think that's okay. I don't think that the idea that of like, you just get it right away, like, that's bullshit, because that gives people too much shame, and then they don't come
Mhm.
back to whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I fell on my face so many fucking times, and I did not care if people judged me. I was like, I'm still alive. I'm gonna fucking keep trying. And I just kept trying. Um, I feel like that's kind of it, You
Yeah.
don't need to stab someone. You don't need to stab someone. I just want to tell people that, but I don't recommend that. Uh, but that's my deal.
Yeah. I just wrote down don't stab anyone just as like a general life lesson for myself. No, but I appreciate you saying that the legal system worked, right? Because,
It
there's
doesn't for a lot of people. I know it doesn't.
exactly. It doesn't and it does, right? For certain people. And
Yeah.
so really appreciate that. I want to move over to David real quick. Tell us a little bit about your recovery path and what worked for you. Oh, and let me unmute you, sir.
I should have known better to unmute myself. Thank you for having me. Uh, thank you, and I love Amy. And you see all these things that people say in the comments about Amy. Love Amy and her book. Same for Erin. Fucking nice things. We love you, Amy. Raccoon Church. What's Raccoon Church? Do you know what that is?
It is a nickname for the meeting I lead for TLC on Fridays, because it's like chaos, beautiful chaos.
Very nice. My recovery journey was unexpected, and it's very weird to me that I'm here. It's always weird to me when I'm in these fucking things. I like Amy. I got sober. I was just a tiny bit younger than Amy when I got sober, because I'll always be just a little bit younger than Amy. Thank God. Um, it's a good time for me. No, I grew up in classic middle class Jewish New York. I started doing drugs when I was a late teen, and I did them until I was 41, and I didn't want to stop taking them. I loved getting high, and I got sober because I just got so tired of the bullshit. And in the end, I got sober because I had gotten off of heroin years before I got sober. I was just so obsessed with I had obsessive thinking, and I needed to be released from my obsessive thinking. And in the end, it was totally 12-step recovery that saved my life. And I went in there, and I've said it a billion times. Uh, they read how it works, and I explained how obsessed I was. They with my family, my wife had left me with my or little baby, and I was obsessed that I had ruined this beautiful thing. And I was smoking weed every day, and I was taking pills here and there. And eventually I went to a meeting and I explained how obsessed I was with my family, and I also take drugs now and again. And it wasn't a drug-centered meeting, and they were so kind to me, and they said, "We'd love it if you came back tomorrow." And I had never had that experience. And I went back the next day and I heard them read how it works, and how that really saved my life. Just that phrase of rarely have we seen someone thoroughly follow this path to achieve these results, or however it's actually phrased. Look, I always get it wrong. But it saved my life. And after that, I committed to it because my big epiphany, I was 41. I figured I would be lucky if I lived to be 82. And if half of my life was spent like this, what could another half of my life be like if I actually take suggestions and try to commit to a program of recovery? And I loved the idea of happy, joyous, and free. And I loved the idea of love and tolerance as our code. I loved those ideas so much. And I wanted to have a different life. And I got into it, and I celebrated 10 years in August, and my life is pretty good. It really it really worked out nicely. So, and I don't know, like, I think I was sitting behind a car in traffic the other day, and they were getting stoned in the car. Like, there's weed coming out of the car, and I'm like, I bet they're having a nice time in that car. I'm thinking, oh, I bet that's a nice deal. And I could smoke pot if I could do whatever I want. I could smoke pot, I could take pills, I could do heroin. The outcome probably wouldn't be good. I don't think my life would be as fun and enriching as it is if I went down that road. So, like, I'm happy to be here. Like, there's a dude that just died in my meeting, and he would always say he was a happy customer of 12 step, a satisfied customer. And that's so my whole recovery is basically 12-step recovery. Am I supposed to keep talking?
I
Yeah,
would never
that's
cut
it.
you off,
That's
David,
it.
but if
No, that's all I got.
I was letting that one resonate. Erin, would you mind coming in and taking a stab?
Oh, hold up. Let me say one thing.
Oh,
Professor
yeah.
Sarah Buck Dowd says she loves me, but I haven't seen her in a dopey thing in months. Where's Professor? Where you been at? Anyway, also big shout out to the Dopey Nation. Thank you for coming. Love these
They
guys.
have they have shown up. Raccoon Church and Dopey Nation have already shown up. All right, Erin, get
Yes.
on it.
Hello.
Yeah, the
So my recovery journey, like I think for most people, wasn't like a straight line. I took my first opiate at 8. I started shooting heroin at 13, hid my addiction for a decade, went to rehab for the first time at 23, and then spent like 5.5 years of just constant relapse. Um, when I was 29, I was 28 and I was pregnant with my first child. I was at that point, it wasn't the worst my habit had ever been. I was just doing enough to not be sick, and decided that I was going to have this baby. I don't know why I decided that. I'm definitely glad that I did. Found a doctor who um, would taper me using buprenorphine over 7 days. It was like maybe a few months after it had been approved by the FDA for that purpose. And I didn't know if I would be able to stay. Um, I really didn't. I did not have confidence in myself, and I don't think anyone else did either. My parents and the father of my child had contingency plans because they expected me to relapse. But this is going to sound trite, but I definitely had one of those epiphany moments the first time that I held my son, because it was the first time I ever looked in somebody's eyes and knew that I loved this baby more than I hated myself. And that's not what kept me here, but it's what got me started. And what really made the difference for me, I mean, my foundation was in 12-step meetings, but I had to personally step away from them, partially because I had made a huge mess, because I also think that my sex and love addiction was a part of that. I had made a lot of mess in the rooms, and I really needed to address my underlying mental health issues. And childhood trauma that I had been avoiding dealing with. And so I started doing that. And I was really, 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 really fortunate that I had health insurance and access to mental health care and physical health care. So I learned how to take care of myself. I had to, because I was responsible now for this baby. So I had to eat. I had to get some sleep. I had to pay my bills. I had to learn how to, you know, manage life as an adult. And I don't think I had really done that, or I hadn't done it well. um, and also part of that for me was also finding a spiritual path. Um, and I first found that in Kundalini yoga, and I'm not like a super woo-woo person. I had hated yoga before that, but I started doing mommy and me yoga, and there was something about at the end of every class, we would lie down and the gong would be played. And there was something about that gong. It was the first time in my life that I ever was able to like have a still mind without drugs. And that kind of got me started on like looking at ways to be present in my body, because my entire life, from my earliest memories, I was always looking for a way out. Um, I've been in recovery now for 22 years. It'll be 23 years next March. And I can't believe that. Like, that blows my mind. It blows my mind because I didn't think that this was possible for me at all. My belief system about myself was so dysfunctional that I just thought that I wasn't a good enough person, that I was a monstrous person, that I didn't deserve it. I felt so much shame about everything about not just what I did while I was using, but who I was. And I don't feel that today. And when I got to the other side of that, it's not like it happened overnight in recovery. And I think, it happens over time, but I really don't have that shame now. And I mean, the relief of that is huge. I cannot overstate how important that was. And that was, a combination of things. It's peer support, it's mental health care, it is finding a spiritual path, which is all sort of, baked into 12-step meetings. That's not the answer for me, but it's the answer for a lot of people. And what's great is that there are a lot of different options today, right? As like with Work It, with Smart Recovery, with Dharma. I mean, there's so many different options. And I don't think like I dip my toe in a lot of things. And I just think like when I need something, like I've done when I've just been struggling, I've done like a just for today with Dave. Like I'm not like I don't care what it is. Like I will take any sort of I will ask for help, which is what I wouldn't do before, and accept that help. And it can come in many different forms. To echo what Amy said, I'm a firm believer that like we really, as a community in recovery, need to make sure that people really get the message that relapsing, while it's not required, is often a part of a recovery journey. And like it does not make you a failure. It does not make you less of a person. And as long as you are alive, there is hope. And that is why I am a big proponent of harm reduction, because you're not going to recover if you're dead. And we all have, I'm sure, lost so many people over the years to either suicide or addiction. And, I think a lot of times those go hand in hand with mental health issues. And I feel like sometimes I'm here because I won the lottery. I don't know. I don't know why it clicked for me. I mean, I can look at I've listed a lot of reasons, but I know people who also had things like that, and it just, for whatever reason, it just, something happened. And the biggest lesson of my recovery is what I had mentioned earlier, is learning to ask for help. Because I think that's the thing that has prevented me for me in the last probably 10, 15 years, it has been less about using and more about struggling with like suicidal ideation. And I think that I'm able to talk to my husband about it, my psychiatrist, my therapist, my friends. Like, that's a huge deal. I never could do that, even in early recovery. I just pretended that everything was okay. And I think that being able to be honest about where I'm at mentally has saved my life. And so happy to be here with everybody. Thank you.
Sometimes you get to hear from folks who like give you a whole new like lease on your own recovery. Thank you, Erin. Lots of great things. One of the things that stuck out to me a lot was that your kiddo was kind of the first inspiration that started it, but didn't maintain it, right? You had to come in and learn to love yourself some too, right? But that your kiddo was kind of the spark that started it and was able to change your perspective. I think that happens for a lot of folks, a lot of parents, partners, and so on. I'm going to come down to you, Tracey. I'd love for you to hear a little bit about your path and kind of what worked for you, maybe what didn't. See if this helps.
There we go. There we go.
There we go.
So first of all, I have to say my views are my own views and they're not the opinion of my employer. So I have to say that that's a disclaimer I have to do this year. I would say that I got sober because I didn't want to die, but I don't really think that that's true. This month is the 30th anniversary of my suicide attempt. And I would say in the process of dying, I learned that I wanted to live. And what happened for me was 10 years of jails, shooting up in between my toes, abscesses, terrible relationships, moving states, freezing, sleeping outside. But you know what? I loved drugs. I cannot stress to people enough how much I loved drugs. And if you love drugs, you still can get sober. Like, there are reasons why people use, and I think that that's not really talked enough about. But I think what I discovered and sort of like the inflection point, what I realized was that I was tired of the consequences. Like, my using started to have less and less joy or even like feeling good, and it was like more an acceleration of pain over time. And so I would switch drugs. I went from heroin to meth to coke to this, and eventually I was just using everything and nothing was working for me. And during this period of time, there was no antiretrovirals. A lot of my very good friends died from HIV that advanced to AIDS. There was there was very few syringe exchanges when I started. I had the very first syringe I had for a year because it was like something from William S. Burroughs where you were like sharpening it on a matchbook, and buprenorphine wasn't available then. It was like, I remember someone was in clinical trial and they gave it to me, and my only time taking buprenorphine, I went into precipitated withdrawal. I've been to the methadone clinic twice. One time was pretty successful. The second time was not as successful. But like all these different things, all these different changes, switching drugs. I'd quit for 7 days. I'd go on a detox. I'd do all these different things. But eventually I got to the place where I wanted to quit. But I didn't know what sober meant. I just knew that I did not want to use anymore. And when I went into jail, I wouldn't say that jail saved my life, but I would say that at the time, jail was one of the few places where I knew you could get into treatment. And not that I even knew what treatment was, because treatment was way different. 27 years ago when I went, treatment was long. The few years before me, they used to teach people to socially drink in treatment. That's why I think abstinence treatment is so strange now, because treatment didn't always like equate abstinence at periods in our history. Like, and some treatment facilities would teach you to drink socially so you could, or they would say, we're just helping you quit your drug of choice. And that was it. And so I became very indoctrinated into 12 step. I was like one of those, I had the NA t-shirts with the keychains and very, very hardcore 12 stepper until these people convinced my very close friend to get off his MAT, and he died of an overdose. And that changed me into being a harm reductionist, because I really started to see that whatever path works for you, whatever is going to work, is better than the alternative, which in my case, in the case of like so many of my friends, was death. So and that started, my work doing overdose prevention. I started doing overdose prevention stuff in 1999. But, there was I would say the real, inflection point for me was when I realized that I wanted to live more than I didn't care if I died. And, then being in recovery, and recovery is whatever you want to make it, having to deal with like getting on psychiatric medication, not even that long ago. Like, now I'm on Ozempic. It's very hard injecting yourself when you don't feel good afterwards. It's very, I started that like a few weeks ago, and, because I realized that I was like fixing myself with food, and like they talk about, sort of like transferring from one thing to another. Like anything that makes me feel good, I can just like, have the obsession and compulsion and sort of like dive into that. So like, I've gone through EMDR therapy. There was a period of time where I did yoga once a week for like 2 years. There was another point in time where I was walking like an hour or two a day for my recovery for like a while. I think your recovery has to be flexible. Like it has to change over time. Like what worked for me in the very beginning would absolutely not work for me. And truly, some of the worst people I've ever known are in 12 step. There's predators in 12. There's all these different kind of things. I like the social aspect of 12 step. I like people coming together for a common goal. I don't like all of there's individuals in there I don't like. And I think that that's important to acknowledge, that like it's a group of people, and groups of people are flawed. And so I personally, evidence-based, medications, therapy, things like that, have helped me. But like there was so much internal stigma. When I first started going to 12 step, they used to say people that were on psychiatric medications were not sober. That was like, it wasn't that it said that in the literature. It would just be like individuals that would say that. And like part of the reason why, after not going for many years, I went back to 12 step a few years ago was to, maybe like 7 years ago, was to, express to people who are on MAT or on medications, like that's not in the literature. That's actually not, even in the AA big book, they talk about harm reduction. They talk about controlled drinking and different kinds of principles of harm reduction. They just don't spell it out as that. So in my life today, I'm getting ready to, take my child to college this weekend, and to think that like, we got through, my child's life without having to hit 9 or 10 ACEs, adverse childhood experiences like I did, like, having the ability to like be have a creative, nurturing environment for my children. And sort of like, I'm in the 5th generation with substance use problems in my family. So to be able to break sort of like generational curses. And now I was thinking about it, I'm 55 now. I've more than half my life I've been sober, and I call it sober just because it's, I call it, I changed my own definitions. And sometimes I call myself a junkie and all these other kind of things, because those are my things that I call for my own inwards for myself. But I just think you wouldn't want to stay the same person, so your recovery can't stay the same over time. And like, just knowing that like, I'm going to try to, and if the different things don't work, the one thing I really want to share is like, I know so many people that relapsed and died because they were so ashamed to admit to someone. But it's like, you have a whole life in front of you, and like one day, one experience shouldn't define your whole existence. Like that's just one thing that happens in a whole lifetime. and like beating yourself up over like, this limited experience or bad weekend or a binge or whatever. It's like, that's not productive. It's like, well, what can I do differently, or how can I move forward, or how can I, what can I learn? What can I change? I think shame doesn't have a place in my life anymore at all. Like, it's just, there's just no place for it. So I just really, I just really appreciate the opportunities, even at this point in my life, to revisit, the period in my life where, I was homeless and, shooting up in the car mirror, in between two cars in the parking lot in the freezing cold, at 5 o'clock in the morning, and like breathing on the car mirror to try to get a vein to pop out. So, it's changed. Things have changed a lot. Now I have 2 degrees, 3 kids, and a home. So thank you.
Nice, Tracey.
Yeah, thank you, Tracey. I think that perspective was so incredibly needed of just how far we've come, and also where we still have to go with addiction recovery. And then Sean Paul, I want to keep us moving, and I want to go over to you, and I want to ask you the same question about your path and maybe some of the things that worked along your way.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everybody's stories. Yeah, my path, nobody's is the same, right? Like, it's all different. So wait, by the numbers, I started using and drinking when I was 14 years old, but the first like substance I used was like, I grew up in Colorado. I went to middle school and high school in Golden, Colorado in like the late 80s and early 90s. Super accepting place for a queer teenager. They loved me there. I was a big hit. Um, the nicest thing I can say about that is they like at least correctly spelled the slurs they would put on my locker. But I think, like my first substance was my like trashy friend Tanya had stolen Marlboro Light 100s from her mom's purse, and we were like smoking them on the way to junior high, and it made me completely sick. It gave me a headache. I wanted to throw up, and immediately I wanted to do it again. I was like, bitch, when are we doing this again? Bring more tomorrow. I want to do 2 tomorrow. And that's how I've always been, right? Like, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and my dad is Irish and a cop and an alcoholic, and just to complete the stereotype, also racist. So like, and my upbringing was really brutal and violent, and I suffered a lot of physical and mental and verbal abuse as a kid. And so by the time I picked up that cigarette and then later a drink at 14, and then weed at 15, and then cocaine at 17, and everything, including heroin, by 20. But by the time I picked up substances, I was fucking ready. I was so ready. My childhood was so stressful that like I needed to take the edge off. I needed to take all of the edges off. So it became like a circle. Like I just like I was so stressed out, and I needed that so badly. And I was not only bullied at home, I was bullied at school. And what drugs and alcohol did for me was save my life, honestly. Like, it got me out of school. I got to hang out with people. I had a social circle. I would be lying if it didn't work, right? Like, it totally worked, and it got me away from the elements that were like could logistically kill me. And I was definitely suicidal. I definitely had mental health stuff going on. We didn't have that dialogue in the 80s. People were like, especially white people that I come from, were like, oh, you're being dramatic, like toughen up. And I'm like, but wait, I want to die. Like, what the fuck? But like, so I didn't know, and I didn't know I had trauma, right? We didn't talk about trauma. And then to find out later that like every single thing that like is related to what I have going on mentally is trauma. Like yeah, and I have a PTSD diagnosis, and no shit, dude. Like, of course I do. And so I started drinking and using at 14. I had a bunch of like start and stops. I had people telling me so many times, like at 20 years old, like my sister cussing me out in a parking lot, being like, dude, what is going on? Because I was like doing meth and like everything was very out of control. I never had any chill around substances. There was never like, I went through a period where I just had a sip of wine. I was always like, I want amnesia. Like I wanted to be fucking knocked out immediately. From like a little child, again, hi, trauma. I like was trying to check out. I would, that Scholastic book fair that you would get, like they would come. That was my first drug dealer. I would get like a stack of books and tear through that shit just so I didn't have to like deal with my reality. I'd be filling out that card being like, bitch, when are they coming back? Like, when is that book fair again? And like, so I like never wanted to deal with life. Like, and if it wasn't the book fair, it was candy, it was movies, it was like anything I could use. So drugs and alcohol was faster and cooler. And my parents definitely had that like after school special conversation with me, like, if you drink or use, you'll end up an alcoholic or you'll end up a drug addict. And I specifically remember at 13 thinking, we'll see, we'll see. Like I wasn't my dad. My dad was like a cop and a loser. I was like cool, right? Like I was like a goth kid who smoked cigarettes. I was like, no, 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 no. I can't be an alcoholic. I'm like the cool alcoholic. Like there's no way that that could be me. And I feel like so much of my drinking and using was trying to like outrun what was very clear to everybody else in the universe. I love that saying in a lot of recovery literature of potential alcoholic or potential drug addict. I think I definitely lived up to my potential, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, and it was very out of control. I moved to LA when I was 23 years old because I was really struggling with meth, and my brother lived there. It was 1995, and he was like, maybe you could come to LA and get your stuff together. And like 1995 for a drug addict in Los Angeles, perfect. It was like moving to Disneyland. And like this is my first, like I realized this doing the work because we talked about at the beginning that I work in recovery. This was my first thing with harm reduction though. When I moved to LA, I stopped doing meth and I was just drinking 7 nights a week, which sounds insane, but like to me, that was better, right? Like at least I was sleeping, at least I was eating, at least I wasn't in psychosis, at least I had this thing where if I was up for several days, I would see bunnies everywhere. So I wasn't seeing bunnies everywhere. So I was just like, it felt better, even though it wasn't better. And I immediately got into a relationship with the gay version of my dad, like an abusive alcoholic. I'm like, isn't that a fucking drag when you wind up dating your parents? You're like, God damn it. And so that sucked. And that relationship was like, I don't know if anybody's seen that play or the movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Like, there's just like two alcoholics yelling at each other the whole time. That was my relationship with this dude for like 12 years, the world's longest production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I kept getting evicted is the thing too, because it like I learned like I couldn't pay my rent with like vibes. Like I just thought that like they would be lucky to have me, right? Like I'm cool. I can use my rent money to buy Coke instead. It's not a big deal. Nobody agreed with me. Like nobody agreed with me 6 times. And then the last time that I got evicted in 2008 was really the last time. And it was also like I knew it was the end of the road for that abusive relationship. And also it had to be the end of the road for drinking and using. I called my sister who was sober like 4 years at the time. And when she got sober, I was like, you're being dramatic. You're not an alcoholic. Our dad's an alcoholic. You're just a mom who drinks wine while her kids are in the car. It's not a big deal. But like, so I called her and I was like, I need help. And my life is out of control. And my sister, being a smartass like myself, was like, oh, with which part? Like your relationship, your drug addiction, the alcoholism. I was like, yeah, girl, all of it. Like all of it is way out of control. And that was the first time I asked for help. And somebody else brought this up. And I think this is so hard. And particularly if you come from trauma, you develop a hyper independence, and which served you really well, especially in dysfunctional homes. Like nobody else was going to do it for me, so I had to figure it out on my own. But that made asking for help so hard because I was always under the I got it, I got it, I got it. And like inside, I'm like fucking dying. And also, people realize, like, no, you don't have it. Like, you keep getting evicted. You clearly do not have it under control. I was at a party on January 1st, 2009, which was the day of my last drink. My sobriety day is January 2nd. And my friend who was hosting the party said to me, she was like, wow, I would think that if like the same shit kept happening to me over and over and over again, I would do something to change it. And I was like, what a bitch. Like, I can't believe she would say that to me. That's so messed up. But she was 1000% right. And so I was unhoused in my early sobriety. I had just fled an abusive relationship. And I like AA was the last house on the block for me. It really was. And we say that in LA all the time. And I just like I walked through those doors. My dad went to AA, but he was still an asshole. So I was like, oh, this doesn't work. But like I was willing to kind of do whatever. And I didn't realize it, but I was like in the act of saving my own life. So I think that that is something to pause on if you're new in recovery or you're struggling and you came back. Like you are doing something to save your own life, and that's fucking huge. You're doing the reverse of what you were doing before, which was like slowly killing yourself. And that's massive, right? And so I just kept showing up. I am a product of culturally specific recovery. I would not be sober had I not found other queer people who were sober. 100%. And there is a lot of evidence-based stuff. Let me put my work hat on about culturally specific recovery. And it makes sense, right? Getting sober around your people because you're not explaining your stories. And I didn't want to like go to meetings with people like my dad. I was like, fuck that. But like I wanted to get sober around people who were like me. And I also didn't know how to be gay and without substances. My culture is like very embedded with substances. We come out of the closet and walk into a bar. And so it's like, how do I figure that out? You know, and then and that was the moment really. And it was just like so slow going, like Amy had mentioned. I never had that thing, and I'm so jealous of people still who have that pink cloud when they first get sober and everything feels good. My life fucking sucked in early recovery. So if anybody is struggling in early recovery and still in hell, you are my people because that was me. I remember being at a meeting with 11 months sober crying, being like, why don't I feel better? And like, I just didn't, right? I was unhoused for a lot of it, like I said. At 7 months sober, I was talking to my best friend that I met in the program. I just texted him the other day. 16 years of talking to this person, but I I said, you know, I think I got to go to a doctor. I was like, I haven't been to a doctor, and he was like, girl, go to a doctor. And so, but I was afraid to go to a doctor. You know, so many of us have shame around going to a doctor, going to a dentist. So I went to a doctor and at 7 months sober found out that I was HIV positive. And I knew at the time that like, okay, this isn't going to kill me. It's 2009. But what I didn't know was how I was going to process difficult news without drinking and using. You know, and like I can't like handle anything without that. Like I was saying, I don't deal with reality. I don't even like to open mail, you know. And so um the point is that I got through it because of other queer sober alcoholics. I had people to call. I had people who said, why don't you just stay home and take care of yourself and we'll bring you food. I had people who say like, feel your shit and it's okay to feel your shit. And for somebody like me, that was so huge to get permission to feel all of my stuff, you know? And that was a huge turning point in my sobriety because I knew that like I could walk through difficult stuff, and more difficult stuff kept happening, right? And it keeps happening. And that is sort of like my hero's journey in sobriety is how does someone who fundamentally not like to deal with shit deal with shit without drinking and using? And that is like that's the plot of the movie for me. Um, and and sometimes the answer is not so well. I don't deal with it so well. Somebody mentioned, like, I have the coping strategies: shopping, bad relationships, sex in general, avoidance, fucking love avoidance, all of those things. But what I don't do is drink or use no matter what. And the biggest difference from this person who went from being this abused, hyper independent kid is that I have people I can call. So no matter how far I've strayed from whatever, like I have always stayed in touch with other sober human beings. I always have a lighthouse or several lighthouses that I can reach out to. And that has been the thing that keeps me coming back to whatever, and and like, even when times are tough, I've been dealing with some depression, and because I have the full mental health gift basket too, and I do all my shit for that, right? Like, I take the medication, I go to therapy, and sometimes I still feel like hell, right? And I reached out to somebody in the program, and they didn't try to fix me, they just heard what was happening. And that's the deal, and I back to trauma, and I think this is just, I bring this up because I know so many of us deal with it, is that today I have completed PTSD therapy. I've actually had to cut my parents out of my life because of recent abusive stuff, and that's been the right thing. And so I don't know, I think I have gotten so much out of the support and love from other people in recovery.
Man, Sean, I have never heard of the phrase culturally specific recovery, but you single-handedly just answered questions about my own recovery.
The
I went I went through
and
five rehabs. They didn't work. I got sober instead online with literally a PDF, a handful of Zoom calls, and a dream. Like, you can get sober these days listening to a podcast. You can get sober reading any of y'all's books. I mean, the different ways are so exceptional. I've just started writing down some of the different ways, the different paths, from absolute physical exhaustion to legal consequences, uh, to a trashy friend named Tanya. I had one of those too as well, Sean. And it's just, it was such an open-ended question. And you're only getting these condensed answers from these brilliant folks. And unbelievably in chat, if you've had your eye on it, I mean, every single one of y'all that has spoke, people are just sending love through these chats for what you're saying. And again, open-ended questions, but I think it's just your brilliance that keeps kind of like bringing these unique and nuanced ways of looking at recovery. And I just want to thank you. And I also want to signal to my audience, I put it in chat, but we've got time for some questions for these amazing people. And they're all friends. And so I feel like pretty comfortable that they can all unmute and interrupt each other and fight each other if they need to for any of these. So, and I'd love to hear more from all of you. So I want to start out with something that I wanted to ask while we load up this Q&A. Keep them coming in. And it's really about kind of the reason I put this panel together is, why are we still here? Why are we still, working in recovery, doing this? I'm 8 years into recovery. I work for a recovery organization, and outside I volunteer for recovery. Like, what's keeping you going? What's keeping you still here? And anyone can take that. Absolutely. Erin, yeah. Come on in here.
Because I think of like where I was at when I felt hopeless. And I think that I remember like the first rehab I went to, there we had meetings come in, and the first woman I heard speak, she had been a sex worker and robbed several banks and had this like crazy story. And it was the first time that when she got to the end of her story, I felt like I could see like the possibility of light. Even if I couldn't see the light yet, I could see the possibility of light. And I think that when we talk about our experiences, we can be that little beam of light for somebody else. I had somebody reach out to me, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, who reached out to me right like 5 years ago, right when my book first came out, and said she was like struggling, and she was the same age I was when I had gotten sober, and she had just had a kid, but she had relapsed and all this stuff was happening. She emailed me and I wrote her back, and she emailed me a couple weeks ago to say, I was just going through old emails and wanted to let you know I have 5 years sober. And that she was so like, she felt like when she read the book it was like a turning point for her. And that's not because my book is so great. It's just because I was open about something that somebody else could relate to. And that's why we share our stories, because we reflect what it means to be a human being. And that's what art can do, whether it's writing or music or sculpture or painting or whatever it is. We are moved because we see ourselves in the art and our experience in the art. So I just want to say that.
Absolutely.
Now I feel like a dick because I like a joker at the top, and everyone else said all these deep things. But I want to just say, yes, I have depression. Yes, I've tried to kill myself. Yes, I have suicidal ideation all the time. My life is still a mess at almost 13 years. Like a lot of really heavy shit, like Sean said, life keeps lifing. You know what I mean? It keeps fucking happening. Both my parents died 9 months apart, and I was like, you know, one of the reasons I stay sober, and again, like everyone said, I mean, I had like Erin said, I mean, it's nice to be in the valley because I don't run into anyone that I fucked. It's really great to walk into a meeting and like not have that fear of like, you know what I mean? Because I just blew through Hollywood AA, you know what I mean? And then ended up going to, gay meetings and just like where no one would, So, but I wanted out. I just wanted fucking out. I didn't like myself. I felt so uncomfortable. And whatever would take me out. Cigarettes, caffeine, sex, shopping, eating, like what I just wanted out. That was it. And like everyone said, like drugs did it the fastest. And then they got really, really dangerous. And you guys have heard this story from me before, but I mean, my life really is hard right now. I've got a lot of really health problems. I've got a lot of financial shit. One of the reasons I stay sober is because when my father was diagnosed, my father was my person, as you guys know. And when he was diagnosed with cancer, he said, promise me that when I die, you won't kill yourself or get it. He said, because I've spent half my fucking life trying to keep you alive. And as addicts, we can't make that promise. It was like, and I just looked down and he said, Amy, I need to know. Promise me. And I just said, I promise, and there's times when I still feel like checking out, like in the real way. And I keep my promises to people I love. That's who I am today. I have integrity. And you know what? And people who I never had a pink cloud. It's never been fun. And also I want to also say in terms of like AA, like fuck those people who tell you to get off your medication. Like, are you a doctor? Fuck you, man. You know what I mean? I know so many people who've been told to get off their med, and you're not really sober. It's like, oh, you want to be super sober? Like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, it is your journey. You get to define what it means. No one else. I'm on a bunch of meds, and I'm on a bunch of meds for my epilepsy that people that used to get high on. You know, and I share it in meetings. I don't give a fuck because people need to know that they can take that stuff and that they can fucking stay sober. You know, it's not something shameful. There are still meetings where you cannot share if you're on antidepressants. Like, who's not on antidepressants? Like, antidepressants, that's light shit, you know? So, but anyway, I just wanted to add that.
I see there's a question, but I feel like I didn't say anything in this fucking panel. Everyone spoke for like 2 minutes. I spoke for 2 minutes. I said I like 12 steps. Then Tracy bashed me for being a 12-step advocate, and then here we are. But I just want to say this. I stayed sober. Um, I did drugs because I loved how drugs felt. And I loved what Tracy said about that. I love drugs so much, but it gave me a miserable life with no possibility. And when I got sober, all of a sudden there were possibilities. And I stay sober because I like how it feels. Like I like the feeling of having possibility. And I'm really a junkie for fun. I mean, I'm a junkie for a lot of things, but I like to have fun. And I stay sober because I want to feel fun. Frankly, I know there will be no fun if I use. I just know that. Maybe there'll be fun for a little bit, for a minute. I don't think it will last. Um, I got into 12 step because it was something to do. I surely do not advocate for, I was on methadone for 7 years. It didn't work for me. I used drugs the whole time. When I got sober, I made fun of people on methadone. I made fun of people on Suboxone because I didn't know what else to do. I did a podcast with my friend Chris, and Chris advocated harm reduction all the time, and I made fun of it because I thought it was funny. And when he died, I realized that it wouldn't be funny to not support people's way. And I believe whatever is keeping you going is fucking awesome. And whatever gives you another day of not dying at the worst, being miserable, surviving, I'm like, go for it. And I just think that the greatest thing is like what makes you happy that isn't using, try to do more of that. You know what I mean? And like, and just, I mean, if it's baking brownies, if it's gardening, if it's walking, if it's eating, if it's watching Oz, if it's chilling, whatever it is that makes you happy, do more of that. I sound like a fucking bleeding deacon up here. I never thought that was going to happen. So I want to apologize for that. And there's a big question for Erin. Do you see the Erin question?
Oh man,
What makes you think you're qualified to give advice, for Christ's sake? Are you crazy? What makes you think you're so qualified?
And also, we got another question where someone is talking about not ever getting away from the consequences and how to and they're newly sober. Evelyn.
Oh, well, I'm going to give you advice on that.
No, that wasn't the one to
No,
you.
I was going to give advice on the thing about the consequences of your actions. When I got honest with everybody about the things that I was the most ashamed of, that I used drugs in the beginning of my pregnancy with my older son, I was so ashamed of that. That I stole like jewelry from my mother that wasn't able to get back from the pawn shop. Like all of those things that I held a lot of shame about. When I got through them and got to the other side of shame and let go of it, I realized that if other people, I've had it happen, in recent years, like when my book came out, where people left book reviews, like they didn't think because I didn't go to jail that I didn't suffer enough consequences for my actions. And it's like, that says so much more about the other person's character than it does mine. You want me to like chastise myself 22 years into recovery for things I did at 15 years old? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think that I've seen it with other people in recovery, like in part of the reason that like I left 12 step meetings is because I kept taking myself off of my psychiatric meds, which at the time was just Wellbutrin. But every bit I had people telling me that I wasn't sober because I was on Wellbutrin. and I would take myself off Wellbutrin and I would relapse every single time, constantly, in a really awful cycle. So it's almost like you need to get to the point of like letting go of that shame and being in acceptance that you can't control what other people think of you, and it's really none of your business. Like that's how I feel now. Like how other people feel about me, if I'm worrying about it, it's none of my business. I need to be right side with myself. And we know when we are. And then I don't know, there was a question about why am I qualified? I'm not a doctor, but even when I was really fucked up on drugs, my friends would ask me for advice.
So
So
there
that's
was
how it started.
there was a question about what do I tell my children going on, about my addiction and harm reduction. My children have known their entire lives. So my
Hmm.
children did homeless outreach on the bus and the train before they were 10 years old. My daughter volunteered at an naloxone program when she was 16. She was giving out Plan B to her friends. Like
Yep,
I have educated them to their developmental level their entire lives, because children don't want to be lied to. I think the most
exactly.
important the most important thing you can do is not have surprises like that. So there's no, like, some child found me on the internet when my kid was in like 7th grade, and he was like, oh, such and such found a picture, but they already had known. Like my kids already knew. Like nothing, you know what I mean? There's no embarrassment. No one can do a gotcha moment when my kids have already been educated. And like, what am I telling my daughter going off to college? Like we've discussed how to keep your drink safe, what to do if somebody's having an overdose, how to don't go off with strange men. There's a lot of like, um, how do but the unfortunately, as a parent, you have to realize that children do grow up and experiment with things, and I can only prepare them so much, and eventually they are going to go out in the world, and like hopefully you've taught them to learn from your own mistakes. So I feel like I've prepared all my kids as much as humanly. But my one time my child was saying we were about to cross the street, and I was jaywalking, and then my son, who at the time was like 12, was like, "Oh, you're going to get arrested for the 12th time." And I laughed, and then I thought, this is terrible. This is such a good joke. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's so funny because it's so in context, and it's like, but you should know how to make this joke at this point. But I realized that's the kind of relationship we had.
Oh, thank you, Tracey, and also for all of y'all fielding some questions there in chat. We have quite a few, but I've already kept our panelists on late. We are going to collect them and make sure that we can get answers for y'all for them. I just feel incredibly humbled. Like I've gotten chills 5 or 10 times, and I've also laughed until I cried. And like that was one of the points I wanted to make of why I'm still here, is because fucking recovery is funny. And being in a group like y'all with y'all, and all the different experiences, all the different paths that got us here, that we can all kind of like laugh at it and also be so, so glad we're here. Has just been remarkable. And again, 1 hour was not enough to hold these 5 powerhouses for sure. And that's why you all need to buy their books and listen to their podcasts to learn more. I'm going to actually put one of the websites in the chat for y'all, that the landing page for this event, because it's got everyone's social, so you can follow them on social media, and links to their books and other projects. So yeah, was not enough time, but I want to thank y'all so much for showing up for this, for being in community together like this for Recovery Month. Erin Khar, David Manheim, Amy Dresner, Tracey Helton Mitchell, and Sean Paul Mahoney. Just incredible.
Oh yeah,
Thank you so much.
can I say one quick thing?
Anything you want, David.
October 4th is DopeyCon in Manhattan. You guys should come. What, Amy? You should come. You're welcome to come. Sean, Tracy, of course, Max.
Hey,
Come
I'm in
to
New York. I'm coming.
Don't be a fucking stranger. That's what I'm
Yay.
saying.
Fucking have me on. Don't be a fucking weirdo about not being in the same room.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it as soon as this is over.
Yeah, let's just redo this on your podcast right now.
Okay,
I'm so
bye everyone.
Bye, Tracey. Thank you.
Bye,
Good to see
Tracey.
you.
All right. On behalf of Work It Health, y'all, thank you so much for coming tonight. Happy Recovery Month.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.